A number of years ago, actually, many years ago, before ever getting married, I decided to get a new puppy. Now, a real cute little fuzzy ball of energy that seemed to throw himself into everything he did. If he was playing, which was most of his waking hours, he did so completely, without reservation. If he was eating, he did that as well, with gusto, never once being distracted by anyone or anything around him. As he grew, a rather disturbing characteristic began to develop. Whenever I was out of the house, he would start tearing things up, and not just chewing and other kinds of mischief that puppies normally do when they're teething. He would also start to howl. Now, I'm not talking about that yippee-barky, I need attention kind of howl. I'm talking about the loud, long, lonely howl that seems to pierce the soul. Well, I needed to go off to my college classes, which tells you how long ago this was, so I wasn't aware of his behavior. For me, life was just moving on as usual. But for my neighbors, it was a different matter altogether. Understandably, they started to complain. They started to howl at me as much as this puppy was howling when I was not at home. Well, some of you already know what was going on. The puppy was lonely. He felt abandoned by me and needed to let it out, which he did. Eventually, life began to settle into some sort of a routine, and he adjusted to the fact that during certain hours of the day I would be absent, but that I would return. Well, feelings of abandonment are very real. They can change the way we look at the world. They can even change the way we interact with others. Feelings of abandonment can interfere with family relations, can invade our workplace, can even alter the way we look at ourselves and the world around us. So let's put this aside for just a moment, and we'll look at this week's Torah portion. The Torah portion for this Shabbat is called Kitisa, and it is the continuation of the previous 4 portions all the way back to chapter 19, when Moses first ascends the Mount Sinai to begin a lengthy personal encounter with God on behalf of us. As you may recall, that journey up the mountain began very early, and in the words of the Torah, amidst thunder and lightning and a dense cloud upon the mountain and a very loud blast of horns, and all the people trembled. Well, what a powerful moment that must have been. But the drama of this moment soon wanes. It wasn't long after Moses disappears that the Israelites turn to Aaron and cry out that they have been abandoned by both Moses and God. Well, we all know the story and how disastrous this turns out to be. Aaron succumbs to the intense pressure from the people and builds for them a golden calf. And what was their reasoning for wanting the golden calf? They are quoted as saying to Aaron, "Come, make us a god who shall go before us, for that man Moses, who brought us from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has happened to him." They feel abandoned, just like that little puppy. They feel vulnerable and they begin to howl. Their leader is gone. What are they to do now? Will Moses return? If so, when? Evidently, in the eyes of the Israelites, the time span was just too long. Well, recently, as I was rereading this portion, I began to look at the issue of time, that Moses is out of sight, and recalled that expression, "It only takes a minute." Well, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, one could say, it'll only take a minute, and everyone knew that the duration of time would be comfortably short. We could wait a minute for whatever was to happen because we knew that the wait would be brief. On the other hand, imagine Moses turning to Aaron and saying, "This will only take a minute," as he starts climbing the mountain. How would he know how long God would talk? And who is he to say to God, "I've got an appointment at 2, can we hurry this along?" And yet, the expression in today's cultural experience is completely different. Just a minute no longer implies just a brief period of time when waiting for a response to an email or a text message you've just sent out. A literal minute is in fact a very long time to wait because the seconds seem to stretch into minutes or even longer. So, Impatient and without a strong leader, the people want action. They are no longer interested in standing quietly and submissively at the foot of the mountain. Whatever the case, the story of the golden calf opens up before us, and we relive that moment when our people participated in something that we know is wrong. If you're like me, you want to cry out, "Don't build the golden calf. Don't do it. You'll just make Moses mad, and then God will punish you." Well, every year we come to this portion, and every year we build the golden calf, and every year Moses shatters the first sets of tablets, God brings a plague, and then Moses journeys back up to the mountaintop to reproduce the tablets all over again. Well, we can't change the story. It happened. It's been inscribed in the Torah to remain there for all time. But we can learn from it. And here's what I mean. In recent years, our country has become embroiled in such economic and cultural turmoil that it seems at times like we have been abandoned by our leadership. Certainly, there have been times when I've wanted to say to some of our local and national leaders, "Where did you get that idea? And have you been living up on top of some mountain somewhere? Don't you know what's going on?" But mostly, it seems that more and more people are walking around as if they have been abandoned. Like that little puppy, they are crying out as if no one is listening, just howling. And it's not that they don't have a reason, they do. But the feelings of desperation, of "I'll do anything," seems to be increasing. Well, the economic situation is so complex and so permeates all of American life that simple, quick solutions will not be effective. Our political leadership on both sides of the aisle agree to that. Just recognizing the problem will not in itself solve it, and as we all know, doing nothing is not an option either. We can't wait around like with that puppy and hope that he gets used to the routine. So what do? Well, truthfully, I don't know. As bright as my mommy says I am, I have to admit that I just don't have the capacity to put all of the pieces of this complex puzzle together to form a coherent picture. But I would like to offer one suggestion, one word: hope. One feeling which is absent in every example of abandonment that I've come across is a sense of hope, and not just false hope, telling someone that things are going to be all right when we have no idea what the future holds for us, but a sense of hope that says, "I will not abandon you." That means more than just "I care." It means rolling up our sleeves and do that icky thing we call touching other people's lives. Does it mean finding jobs for the recently unemployed? Well, if we can, yes. But more than likely, it means being a good listener. Even when our own troubles are boiling and churning around inside us, believe me, listening to someone talk about their problems is not always an easy thing to do. But that is exactly what we need right now. We need it from our family. We need it from our political leaders. And this will not be easy. We are inundated by this deluge of tragic stories from the news media, from the people we know, perhaps even in our own life. The howling sound of pain, despair, and abandonment can become so deafening that the tendency is to turn a deaf ear to it all, to close the door and turn away. Let's face it, we're afraid to open that door for fear of being overwhelmed by what's behind it. It would be so much easier to build imaginary gods of gold and let them do all the worrying. But that's not going to work either. So as our country continues on our road to what I truly believe is recovery, it is my hope that each of us will be sensitive to those who feel abandoned by all that is going on and decide that we will listen, not to fix or to heal, although healing comes from listening, but to just listen. Perhaps then we will realize that the voice we are listening to is not only the sound of a person in despair, but also the still small voice of God within each one of us. Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos.